A military dog halted at the entrance to the helicopter, declining to board even with direct orders and the presence of nearby enemy forces. His handler was confronted with a difficult decision: leave his faithful companion or disregard instructions and jeopardize the safety of everyone. However, when they eventually determined what the dog had sensed within the aircraft, it sent a wave of apprehension through the group. If they had departed according to schedule, none of them would have survived. Curious to learn the reason? Please subscribe and leave a comment indicating your location. Now let's begin. The night air hung thick with tension as Staff Sergeant Mike Connors pressed his back against the stone wall of the compound, night vision goggles revealing the green-hued landscape of the remote village. Beside him, Sergeant Taylor checked his weapon, a nervous habit that had become familiar during their months of deployments together. "Tell me again why we're doing this discreetly?" Taylor murmured, observing the shadows. "Because officially we shouldn't be 10 kilometers within this area," Mike responded. He was focused on both their discussion and the compound's interior, where they'd been documenting weapons caches for the past hour. Headquarters requires plausible deniability should complications arise. Rex, Mike's Belgian Malinois partner, was positioned between them, remaining watchful even after having traversed 12 miles of challenging ground from their insertion point. The dog's ears reacted to every noise, his strong frame holding restrained power. "Time to move," Mike stated, glancing at his watch. "We've obtained what we were looking for." They quietly advanced through the darkness towards the eastern wall, employing their well-rehearsed stealth. Their extraction helicopter would not be ready for another 2 hours, at a landing zone 5 miles from their position. That's when everything went wrong. The spotlight caught them halfway across the open space, followed by shouted commands in a language neither of them spoke. Rex's low growl served as the only warning before gunfire erupted from the guard tower. "Go!" Mike shouted, returning fire as Taylor sprinted for cover. The following moments descended into chaos, muzzle flashes briefly lighting the darkness, the distinct sound of AK-47 fire, and the heavy sound of boots as guards reacted to the alarm. They moved towards the perimeter, Rex staying near Mike's side, sometimes quickly moving forward to create space between the pursuers and the retreating Americans. Taylor was injured just as they reached the outer wall, a bullet passing through his right thigh. "I'm hit," he gasped, falling against the ground, blood already soaking through his tactical pants. Mike pulled him behind rocks as more bullets flew overhead. Their location was exposed, their initial exfil plan ruined, and the closest Allied forces were over 30 miles away. "Command, this is Bravo 6, Mike spoke into his comms. "Mission compromised, 1 wounded and under fire. Request immediate extraction at secondary LZ." The crackling response confirmed his concerns. "Negative, Bravo 6. The closest available unit is 40 minutes away. Can you avoid detection and move to the rally point?" Mike observed Taylor's pale expression, then glanced at Rex, who remained vigilant at the edge of the area, attentive and alert, perceiving a threat the humans did not. "Roger that," Mike responded. "Heading to the rally point. We require medical assistance." He addressed Rex, giving the quiet instruction that would decide their survival. "Locate an escape route, boy." Rex proceeded purposefully, guiding them away from the compound, through a ravine not shown on their tactical maps. The dog stopped intermittently, ears swiveling to pick up sounds beyond human perception, before selecting routes that kept them hidden from the search parties scouring the hills. "Your dog is remarkable," Taylor said, struggling through gritted teeth, as Mike partially carried him across a rocky streambed. The improvised tourniquet had lessened the bleeding, but Taylor's complexion grew paler with each minute. How could he know where to go? Rex was chosen for missions such as this, Mike explained, thankful for the dialogue that helped keep Taylor conscious. Belgian Malinois possess remarkable situational awareness. He is analyzing terrain, registering sensory input, listening for dangers, processing all of it faster than any technology we have. They stopped as Mike examined Taylor's wound. The projectile had exited cleanly, yet the hemorrhage was substantial. Taylor would be unable to traverse any significant distance without support. "Command, this is Bravo 6, Mike transmitted via comms. Hostile forces remained in pursuit. Sergeant Taylor's state was worsening. Request for extraction prioritization was initiated. The radio emitted static. Bravo 6, this is command. A friendly helicopter was rerouted to your location. Estimated time of arrival, 25 minutes at coordinates Delta 3. Mike consulted his navigation device. Delta 3 remained 3 kilometers distant, a manageable distance ordinarily, but with Taylor's injury and enemy patrols active in the vicinity, reaching it would be precarious. We will arrive, he told Taylor, although uncertainty likely reflected in his gaze. Simply abandon me, Taylor said feebly. I am only an impediment. That is not occurring, Mike stated resolutely. We all return or no one does. Rex abruptly stiffened, fur bristling as he focused on the darkness behind them. Mike swiftly extinguished their tactical light, drawing Taylor further into the darkness. Moments later, a search group passed within 30 meters of where they were, the enemy soldiers illuminating the area with flashlights. Continuing onward, the sound of rotor blades reached them distantly. Rex increased his speed, indicating they were approaching their target. The dog led them through a final stretch of dense brush before the terrain opened, revealing a small clearing nestled between hills, their designated landing zone. We made it, Mike said, assisting Taylor, whose body was becoming increasingly weak. Just a little further. The clearing was scarcely large enough to accommodate a helicopter. Mike helped Taylor to lie down behind some boulders, examining his wound again. The bleeding had lessened, but Taylor's skin felt cold and clammy, and his eyes were having difficulty focusing. Stay with me, man, Mike encouraged. The helicopter is nearly here. Rex moved to the edge of their cover, his posture tense as he surveyed the surroundings. In the distance, the characteristic sound of helicopter rotors became increasingly noticeable. Command, this is Bravo 6 at extraction point, Mike reported. Be advised, enemy forces remain in the area. Approach with caution. Roger, Bravo 6. Black Hawk is 2 minutes out. Pop smoke when you have visual. The helicopter emerged as a dark shape against the night sky. The lights dimmed as they initiated a tactical maneuver. Mike deployed a smoke canister, and the Black Hawk descended swiftly, dust kicked up by the rotor blades. The side door opened, and Captain Riley, the pilot, made an urgent hand gesture for them to enter. Move it, Riley yelled above the engine's roar. I'm detecting multiple heat signatures approaching from the south. Mike helped Taylor to his feet, partially pulling him towards the helicopter. Rex moved in front of them, his ears perked and attentive to any danger. Riley called out, her expression tense, "Get in now. We've got company coming." 20 yards from the helicopter, Taylor's legs gave out. Mike adjusted his grip, now practically carrying his teammate, as they closed the final distance to safety. Just as they reached the boarding ramp, Rex abruptly stopped. The change in the dog's demeanor was dramatic. His body stiffened, ears flat against his head, eyes fixed on the helicopter. As Mike issued the order to board, Rex retreated, letting out a quiet growl Mike hadn't experienced except during training. Rex, come, Mike instructed. The dog, however, remained in place, obstructing access to the helicopter. What's the delay? Riley called out, her gaze shifting between her instruments and the landscape. We need to be airborne immediately. Taylor leaned against Mike, appearing to be barely aware of his surroundings. What's the issue with the dog? Mike looked at Rex, puzzled. Over 3 years of operations, encompassing numerous helicopter insertions and extractions, Rex had consistently followed commands. The dog's training was flawless, his obedience complete until now. Something's wrong, Mike muttered. He wouldn't act like this without a reason. We don't have time for this, Riley called out. Enemy forces are less than a click away and closing. Mike observed Rex's rigid posture, then looked to the helicopter, and finally to Taylor's pale face. Each second they remained exposed, their danger grew. However, Rex's actions triggered a warning he couldn't dismiss. The dog wasn't simply refusing to enter. He was actively blocking their approach to the aircraft. Rex, heel, Mike commanded again, his tone more insistent. The dog remained steadfast, his eyes fixed on the helicopter, his body rigid with what Mike identified as an alert posture, not fear. What the hell is going on? Riley shouted above the rotor noise. Less than 2 minutes remained before potential compromise. Mike's thoughts accelerated. Rex, trained to identify explosives, weapons, and other dangers, was hesitant to approach the helicopter. Mike reported a possible threat to the aircraft and instructed Taylor to descend. Rex is detecting something, he said. Riley's face changed from impatience to worry. My pre-flight checks were clean. There's nothing wrong with this bird, I stated. The radio on Mike's tactical vest emitted static. Bravo 6, this is command. Satellite indicates multiple hostiles are moving towards your location. Evacuate immediately. Repeat, evacuate immediately. Taylor's head rested against Mike's shoulder, his voice a whisper. The dog is agitated. Abandon him. That's not happening, Mike responded resolutely. The Malinois wasn't demonstrating general fear. It was exhibiting a specific alert response, the type it had been trained to show when detecting a threat. Command is ordering immediate extraction, Riley announced. Fuel is being consumed while we wait. A decision is needed, Sergeant. Mike was familiar with the established procedures. The mission held the highest priority. Taylor's life was critically important. The predefined procedure for operations under duress was unambiguous. The extraction must be completed at any cost. However, Rex had never been incorrect. I require 1 minute, Mike said to Riley. We cannot afford a minute, Riley responded. Enemy combatants are closing in from the south and west. If we do not launch immediately, we will all be eliminated or taken prisoner. The radio emitted a burst of static, followed by the voice of Colonel Westmore, the operation commander. Staff Sergeant Connors, this is a direct order. Board that helicopter immediately. Mike paused, wrestling with his sense of obligation and the intuition that had protected him during 3 deployments. Sir, my K9 is signaling a possible danger to the aircraft. I request authorization to examine the area before boarding. Colonel Westmore responded, Negative, Sergeant. An unmanned enemy drone is approaching your location in under 2 minutes. You are out of time. Abandon the dog if needed. Leave that stupid fucking dog and get on the chopper. That's an order, Connors. Westmore's voice crackled through the static. Something broke inside Mike at those words. 3 years together, dozens of missions, countless lives saved, including his own. Rex wasn't equipment, he was his partner. He's not just a dog, Mike replied, his voice firm, and he's indicating a problem with the aircraft. Are you jeopardizing this entire operation because of an animal? Westmore's voice boomed over the radio. That helicopter is the only resource available in the area. Miss this extraction and there won't be a second chance. Taylor's breathing had become shallow. His skin was turning a gray color that Mike had seen countless times from battlefield injuries. Immediate medical assistance was crucial. Without it, he wouldn't survive. Riley had deactivated the main rotors to preserve fuel. The helicopter remained motionless in the clearing while she observed her instruments. Command wants us to abort, she relayed to Mike. Orders are to take off in 30 seconds, with or without you. Mike remained steadfast, Rex still positioned between them and the helicopter, his focus unbroken. Years of battlefield experience had instilled in Mike a single, vital understanding. In critical situations, instinct takes precedence over instructions. If you proceed without us, the mission is compromised, Mike relayed to Riley. Taylor possesses the crucial intelligence. Should he be captured or killed, all that we've endangered our lives for will be lost. Riley's face displayed a transition from frustration to doubt. Command is threatening to permanently restrict my operations if I disregard instructions. My professional standing is at stake. So is mine, Mike responded. Rex is the top detection dog in the regiment. If he indicates a problem with that helicopter, there is a problem. The radio emitted static again, Westmore's voice now laced with anger. Captain Riley, you are instructed to take off immediately. Abandon Connors and the wounded if they are unwilling to board. That is a direct order. Following a moment of suspense, Riley removed her headset and exited the helicopter. Colonel Westmore, she said, speaking directly into the radio, this is Captain Riley. I will look into the K9's alert and will report back. Without waiting for a reply, She turned off the radio, cutting off Westmore's objection. You've just signed your own discharge papers, Mike said softly. Riley shrugged. Perhaps, but I've observed these dogs operate previously. If yours is this certain, it would be unwise not to verify. Riley tossed her flight helmet into the cockpit and moved forward cautiously, pausing a short distance from where Rex kept his alert position. What is he trained to detect? She asked. Explosives, weapons, chemical agents, Mike replied. But he's also cross-trained for mechanical anomalies. Dogs can detect subtle changes in machinery that instruments miss. Riley's professional skepticism conflicted with her pilot's instinct for caution. I performed a complete pre-flight check before takeoff. All systems were nominal. Mike nodded toward Rex. He disagrees. A moan from Taylor brought their attention back to her. The wounded soldier's condition was worsening rapidly, his face now ashen. We need to get him treatment sooner, he won't make it, Mike stated urgently. Riley looked back at the helicopter, then surveyed the surrounding terrain where enemy forces were approaching. I'm giving this 5 minutes, she decided. If we don't find anything by then, we fly. Dog or no dog. Deal, Mike agreed quickly. Rex, find it. The command freed the Malinois from his blocking position. Rather than entering the helicopter, Rex commenced a careful sweep around the aircraft, his nose working with focus as he detected something undetectable to the humans. Rex's concentration grew stronger on the port side close to the engine housing. His posture altered slightly, ears pointing forward, tail rigid, movements more precise. He's nearing something, he communicated to Riley. This is the way he acts when he's pinpointing a target. Riley observed with increasing worry as Rex stopped under the main rotor assembly, his nose directed upward towards the engine housing. The dog glanced back at Mike, then looked again at the engine, his stance now stiff with alertness. He's found something, Mike confirmed. It's inside the engine compartment. Riley paused briefly before deciding. I need to check it, she stated, climbing onto the helicopter skid to reach the maintenance panel. Should a mechanical problem be significant enough for your dog to identify, I require notification prior to takeoff. As she reached for the access panel, a distant crack resonated across the clearing, a rifle shot from the advancing enemy forces. They've located us, Mike warned, drawing his sidearm. We're out of time. Riley's expression became resolute as she operated the latches on the access panel. Then let's hope your dog is correct and we can repair whatever he's found in the next 3 minutes. The maintenance panel creaked open, exposing the intricate network of fuel lines and hydraulic controls. Riley directed her tactical flashlight into the space, carefully examining the parts. Report, Riley, Mike called out to her. What's your assessment? Riley's features shifted as her light caught something at the back of the compartment. I'm seeing a hairline fracture in the main fuel feed line, she stated, her voice strained. Fuel was leaking onto the hot section housing. How bad? Mike asked. Riley moved to get a better view with her light. The crack was severe enough that flight vibrations would have widened it within minutes once cruising altitude was reached. She didn't complete the sentence, but her concerned expression conveyed the gravity of the situation. Catastrophic failure, Mike asked directly. Riley confirmed. Mid-air fuel line rupture feeding directly onto superheated engine components. Best case, emergency landing in hostile territory. The most severe possibility is fire and explosion, Mike determined. This appears to be damage caused by temperature changes, she stated. The sandstorms allow fine particles to spread everywhere, particularly affecting engine parts. A gunshot sounded nearer now, followed by shouts echoing in the distance. Can you repair it? Mike asked urgently. Riley hesitated, biting her lip. Perhaps. I possess a field repair kit, but it's intended for hydraulic lines, not fuel feeds. It might last long enough to get us back to base, but I can't guarantee it. The dog's ears suddenly perked up, his focus directed towards the ridge line where shadows moved against the night sky. They're getting closer, Mike warned. Whatever you're going to do it quickly. Riley went to the cockpit, returning with a compact repair kit. I need 5 minutes, she said, climbing back up to the engine compartment. Maybe less if your dog's observation saves us from having to troubleshoot. Mike gently scratched Rex behind the ears. Good boy, he murmured, the best boy. Riley worked with practiced efficiency, her fingers moving deftly despite the awkward angle and poor lighting. The specialized epoxy compound she applied needed to create a temporary seal strong enough to withstand the pressure of flight. "This repair won't pass any inspection," she muttered, wrapping a reinforcing mesh around the crack. "But it might get us home." Mike stood at the perimeter, rifle ready as he surveyed the advancing hillside. The enemy fighters were moving steadily closer, utilizing the terrain for cover. "How much longer?" he inquired of Riley. "Almost there," she responded, not looking up from her task. "The compound needs another 60 seconds to set properly before I can pressurize the system." Rex abruptly froze, his focus fixed on the eastern approach to the clearing. A low growl resonated in his chest. Mike quickly noticed the alteration in behavior. "They're closer than we thought," he murmured to Riley. "Rex has them." The dog's ears were pressed against his head, his body tense. Mike lifted his rifle, peering through the tactical scope to survey the area Rex was fixated on. There, a brief movement against the rocks. 2 individuals, potentially 3, were moving in a flanking maneuver as the primary force advanced from the west. "Riley," Mike called quietly, his voice filled with urgency. "Enemy contacts are approaching from behind, less than 100 meters and closing rapidly. We must depart immediately." Riley completed the last application of sealant, her actions swift but accurate. She stated, 30 more seconds are needed for the minimum curing time, as she already began closing the access panel. A shorter time would risk the patch failing during takeoff. "Rex," Mike instructed quietly, "protect Taylor." The Malinois instantly moved to position himself guardedly next to the unconscious soldier. Mike established a defensive posture, rifle firmly against his shoulder. The initial muzzle flash appeared on the eastern ridge. A rifle shot followed, accompanied by the sound of a bullet passing above. Mike fired in measured bursts, prioritizing suppression over attempts to hit targets obscured by distance. Under fire, he called out as additional shots echoed from several locations. 10 seconds, Riley responded, noting the helicopter's rotors initiating their startup sequence. Rex emitted a sharp bark, signaling movement from another direction. Mike turned, observing 3 more fighters advancing from the southern edge of the clearing. He discharged another burst, causing them to retreat for cover. "We need to load Taylor now," Riley called over the intensifying rotor noise. "The patch will either hold or it won't, but we're running out of time." Mike secured his rifle and hurried to Taylor's side, lifting the injured soldier in a fireman's carry. The volume of enemy fire increased as he advanced towards the helicopter, bullets impacting the earth close by and ricocheting from the aircraft's armored underside. The key uncertainty lingered. Would Rex now enter the helicopter of his own accord, given the mechanical problem was resolved? Mike paused at the boarding ramp, glancing toward his canine partner. "Rex, come a bordo." The instant lingered as Rex stood at the ramp's edge. His focus remained on the engine compartment, the location of the repair. Without hesitation, the dog jumped into the cabin, indicating his approval of Riley's work. "He's good with it," Mike shouted to Riley as he secured Taylor on the cabin floor. "Let's go." The helicopter lifted shakily, its engine straining as Riley performed an emergency takeoff procedure. Mike took position at the open door, rifle ready as enemy fire continued to strike the aircraft's underside. A violent shudder ran through the aircraft as something struck the tail section. Alert signals illuminated Riley's instrument panel, yet she kept the aircraft steady, sharply turning eastward to create space from the attacking fighters. She relayed that the tail rotor had sustained damage, her hands swiftly adjusting the controls, managing to keep the helicopter operational, albeit precariously. A rapid detonation occurred on the hillside, an RPG having narrowly missed them. The blast's impact jolted the helicopter, causing a brief spin that Riley struggled to correct. "They possess substantial weaponry, we skate," Mike exclaimed, observing yet another combatant identified by the recognizable barrel of a rocket launcher. Another RPG whizzed past them, narrowly avoiding the primary rotor by a few inches before exploding in the night sky beyond. The helicopter vibrated once more, alarms sounding in the cockpit as systems neared their operational boundaries. As Mike reached for the radio, a frightening new sound pierced the helicopter's noise. A high-pitched whine emanated from the engine compartment, followed by a metallic snap that echoed through the airframe. Riley's eyes widened in alarm as warning indicators illuminated her panel. Fuel pressure was decreasing, the patch was failing. Riley swiftly manipulated the controls, making quick adjustments to preserve altitude. She rerouted fuel flow, deactivated non-essential systems, and reported we might reach Outpost Delta if the secondary lines remain functional. Rex proceeded to the cockpit entrance, his focus returning to the engine compartment. However, unlike his earlier vigilant stance, the dog now simply observed, his ears pricked forward, seemingly assessing the circumstances. "I think your dog is performing systems checks," Riley remarked with a tense laugh. "He keeps looking directly at the location of that fuel line." Another mechanical groan arose from the engine, accompanied by a brief increase in power. The aircraft stabilized, establishing a rhythm despite the damage and strained repairs. "I believe the epoxy is resealing as it warms," Riley stated, a cautious hope evident in her voice as she examined the instruments. "Pressure is stabilizing, it's not ideal, but potentially sufficient to get us home." Mike engaged the communication system. "Command, this is Bravo 6, we are airborne with one critically wounded. Helicopter sustained damage during extraction. We are requesting an emergency medical team at Outpost Delta, ETA 20 minutes. Static filled the airwaves as Colonel Westmore's voice cut through. His previous frustration vanished, replaced by a calm, professional demeanor. "Copy that, Bravo 6 medical team standing by, what's your aircraft status?" Captain Riley grasped the handset. "This is Captain Riley, aircraft operational but damaged. Tail rotor compromised, fuel system patched. We'll make it to Delta, but this bird won't fly again without major repairs." Westmore responded. "Understood. Priority is getting our people home safe. Well done, Captain. Excellent work, Staff Sergeant." The lights of Outpost Delta became visible on the horizon. This was a comforting sight following the difficult flight. Riley had kept the helicopter at a reduced altitude, carefully managing the damaged systems and maximizing the aircraft's capabilities. She announced, with noticeable relief, 5 minutes remaining, noting that a medical team should be ready. To Mike's surprise, Taylor's eyes opened briefly. The dog, he whispered, his voice barely audible over the engine noise, was right. Yes, he was, Mike agreed, signaling Rex to come closer. The Malinois approached carefully, seeming to understand the fragility of the wounded soldier. "He saved all of us." The helicopter descended toward the brightly lit landing pad, its movement sluggish, but controlled under Riley's expert handling. Upon landing, medical staff quickly moved forward with a stretcher, and ground crew positioned fire suppression equipment around the aircraft. Taylor was transferred to the medical team, with Mike providing a quick summary of his condition as preparations began to move him to the field hospital. As Taylor was transported, Riley exited the cockpit, her flight suit marked with hydraulic fluid and sweat. With exhaustion visible in her movements, but satisfaction in her eyes, she addressed Mike and Rex. "Your dog," she said, shaking her head in amazement, "just saved 3 lives in a $12 million aircraft." If that fuel line had ruptured at altitude, she trailed off, leaving the implications clear to both of them. Colonel Westmore then approached from the command center, his expression unreadable as he stopped before them. A brief, tense silence fell as Mike prepared for the expected rebuke. Unexpectedly, Westmore offered his hand. "That was some of the finest judgment I've seen in 20 years of command, Sergeant Connors," he said, astonishing both Mike and Riley. Prioritizing his canine partner over direct orders demonstrated courage. He then knelt before Rex, who displayed impeccable military bearing, even after the challenges of the extended mission. Regarding this soldier, Westmore stated, with evident respect in his voice, "I believe there's a stake in the officer's mess bearing his name." Following Westmore's departure, Riley addressed Mike. "I've been flying for 12 years, she said softly, "and never once questioned my pre-flight checks or the maintenance team's work. If your dog hadn't stopped us," she shook her head, unable to finish the thought. "That's why we trust them," Mike responded briefly. Despite potential failures in technology, established procedures, and even directives, they still observe what remains unseen. Rex rested against Mike's leg, exhibiting signs of tiredness now that the immediate threat had subsided. Considering that this dog had traversed miles of challenging terrain, identified a crucial mechanical fault, and rescued 3 lives during a single night, it appeared to be a deserved display of weariness. "Come on, boy," he said softly. "Let's go check on Taylor, and then I believe someone promised you chicken." Have you ever observed an animal perceiving danger that humans missed? The remarkable capabilities of certain animals, particularly trained military and police dogs, frequently determine the difference between life and death in crucial situations. Would you rely on your animal's instincts even if it required disregarding direct orders? Staff Sergeant Connors confronted this challenging decision, and his belief and his partner protected everyone on that mission. Share your opinions in the comments below. If this incredible story of canine heroism impressed you, please like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing tales. Click the bell icon to turn on notifications so you never miss another story. Share this video with friends who appreciate the extraordinary bond between handlers and their canine partners. Check out our previous canine stories appearing on your screen now. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, with a brand new video. A police dog persistently barked at a pregnant woman in the mall, leading to confusion and embarrassment. Initially, the incident was disregarded, and security even asked them to leave. However, hours later, doctors revealed a disturbing realization. If the dog hadn't intervened, the baby wouldn't have survived. The following details the actual sequence of events. Please share in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe, as another compelling Royal Guard story will be released tomorrow at the same time. You won't want to miss it. The fluorescent lights of Seattle's downtown precinct hummed overhead as Officer Deborah Morgan clipped the specialized canine vest onto Max, her Belgian Malinois partner of 3 years. Outside, the October rain painted the city streets in glistening reflections. A persistent rain fell, the sort that residents generally ignored but tourists hurried to avoid. Deborah straightened her uniform collar, verified her gear one last time, and looked at the wall clock. It was 7:15 a.m., 15 minutes until their patrol shift formally started. Prepared for another day ensuring the streets were secure. "Partner?" she inquired, gently scratching behind Max's attentive ears. The dog's intelligent, amber eyes followed her actions with the focused intensity that had earned him a legendary reputation within the department. His muscular physique remained perfectly still as she fastened the specialized canine unit patches, signifying his status as law enforcement rather than a service animal. The precinct was filled with the regulated disorder of shift change. Night officers completing reports before departing for home, day shift receiving assignments, and coffee being consumed in abundance. Sergeant Wallace stopped as he walked by, giving Max a respectful nod. "Got something interesting for you two today, Morgan," he said, presenting a tablet containing their patrol assignments. A shopping mall had reported some minor shoplifting. Ordinarily, a standard patrol unit would be dispatched, but there had been a string of organized retail thefts in that area. Management specifically asked for our best team. Deborah held back a smile at the subtle compliment. Her 7 years with the canine unit had established a reputation for meticulousness, but it was Max who had genuinely defined their partnership. What started as routine patrol and apprehension training transformed when trainers recognized Max's exceptional sense of smell, especially his capacity to identify blood in quantities so small they occasionally bypassed laboratory analysis. This skill set was first used for identifying injured suspects and finding victims during disaster events. 2 years prior, they were involved in the response following the Highway 18 bridge collapse, where Max located 3 victims trapped under rubble that thermal imaging failed to detect. His remarkable accuracy resulted in specialized training with the Medical Detection Research Program at Pacific Northwest University, where researchers continued to investigate the full scope of his abilities. "Another day, another dollar," Deborah commented, attaching Max's lead to her belt as they proceeded towards the parking garage. The specialized canine unit SUV waited in its designated spot, equipment already inspected and loaded during the previous night's end-of-shift protocol. While driving through Seattle's rain-slicked streets, Max sat attentively in his custom compartment, occasionally observing passing pedestrians before refocusing his gaze ahead. Morning traffic flowed with reluctant efficiency, commuters maneuvering between puddles and construction detours as the wipers maintained a steady rhythm against the windshield. Their radio emitted static before delivering the morning's first dispatch. Unit K-93 respond to Westfield Shopping Center, south entrance near Macy's. Loss prevention personnel have detained a shoplifting suspect who has requested police assistance for a formal arrest and a potential link to organized retail theft. K-93 is responding, Deborah acknowledged, activating her lights to expedite travel through the busy streets. Estimated time of arrival is roughly 8 minutes. Max noticed a change in her voice, a slight transition to the official tone that invariably indicated they were on duty. As they neared the large Westfield shopping center, neither expected this seemingly ordinary call to challenge their teamwork in unforeseen ways. The south entrance was unusually busy for a Wednesday morning. A local school holiday had drawn numerous families, filling the walkways with strollers and teenagers, even with the ongoing rain. Deborah led Max through the automatic doors, and his training was immediately apparent as he moved through the busy area with precise heel alignment, disregarding the infrequent surprised reactions or pointing from children who noticed the police dog. Security Chief Alvarez greeted them just inside. His neat uniform and professional appearance stood in contrast to the visibly distressed young man in handcuffs sitting on a bench nearby. A small collection of merchandise still bearing security tags was gathered as evidence. "Thank you for coming," Officer Morgan, Alvarez said, extending his hand. "We caught this one attempting to leave with approximately $600 worth of electronics. The store manager wishes to press charges, and we've had 3 comparable incidents this month." Deborah nodded, already assessing the surroundings while maintaining a relaxed but firm hold on Max's lead. "We will collect his information and transport him back to the precinct for processing. Are there any witnesses we should speak with?" Alvarez indicated a small group of people waiting close to the security office: a store employee, an elderly man using a cane, and a visibly pregnant woman wearing a blue maternity dress, appearing to be approximately 7 months pregnant. The woman in blue, Emily Thompson, had observed him removing security tags in the electronics department. She was the individual who notified our team. Deborah moved toward the witnesses, with Max moving smoothly alongside her. Gathering statements had become a familiar process for her during her time on the force. Build rapport, collect information in chronological order, address any discrepancies, and thank individuals for their civic duty. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm Officer Morgan. I understand you observed the shoplifting incident. I would like to obtain your statement if you—" Max's actions shifted so abruptly that Deborah nearly lost her hold. The Belgian Malinois froze, his nose working intensely, his focus entirely on Emily Thompson. Before Deborah could give a correction, Max emitted 3 distinct barks, not the usual alert bark used in training, but a more pressing, more demanding sound. "Max, quiet," Deborah stated firmly, a blush rising on her cheeks as people turned to look throughout the mall entrance. The dog disregarded her entirely, an unprecedented action in their 3 years together. He edged closer to the pregnant woman, his barks growing louder. Emily Thompson moved backward, her hand moving to shield her belly. "What's wrong with him? Is he dangerous?" she asked, her voice filled with worry as she stepped away. "I'm so sorry," Deborah said, positioning herself between Max and the woman. "He's extremely well trained. This behavior is completely out of character." Security Chief Alvarez advanced, his demeanor shifting from professional to concerned. "Officer Morgan, perhaps you should remove your dog from the premises. We have other witnesses who can provide statements." Max continued to strain toward Emily, whining now between barks, his entire body communicating urgency that Deborah couldn't understand. A small group had assembled, with phones out to capture what was happening. The department certainly didn't need a viral video showing a police dog seemingly intimidating a pregnant woman. "Ma'am, are you okay?" Deborah asked Emily, still working to keep Max under control. "Did he frighten you?" Emily's hand stayed protectively on her abdomen. "I'm fine, just startled. Perhaps he's responding to something different." The baby kicked precisely as he began barking.
Deborah commanded. "Max, settle."
Deborah spoke with greater authority, eventually succeeding in drawing him back a few steps, even though his gaze remained focused on Emily's midsection. His actions were raising concerns for Deborah. This wasn't a display of aggression or a lack of training. It appeared Max was attempting to urgently convey a particular message. Mrs. Thompson, this may seem unusual, but are you having any medical concerns related to your pregnancy? Any pain or discomfort whatsoever? Emily appeared surprised by the inquiry. Just the typical backache and some pressure, nothing unexpected for 7 months. Why are you asking? Alvarez's patience was obviously dwindling. Officer, we have a retail theft suspect in custody and witnesses waiting. If your canine is unable to maintain appropriate behavior, we should proceed with this process without him. Deborah nodded reluctantly, feeling conflicted between her professional duties and the persistent feeling that Max's behavior needed to be addressed. Throughout the 3 years they'd collaborated, he had never been incorrect when alerting with such urgency. I understand. Mrs. Thompson, I apologize for the interruption. If you are willing to proceed, I'd like to swiftly record your statement so you can leave. As Emily began describing what she'd observed in the electronics department, Max finally sat at Deborah's direction. He kept his gaze fixed on the pregnant woman, his muscles visibly trembling as he fought against whatever his instincts urged him to do. Again, I sincerely apologize for Max's behavior, Deborah said, concluding Emily's statement, her voice remaining professional despite the lingering embarrassment she felt. The pregnant woman had provided detailed information about the shoplifter's actions, but throughout the entire conversation, Max had remained focused on her, whining softly despite Deborah's quiet corrections. It's really fine, Emily insisted, though she kept a cautious distance from the Belgian Malinois. Animals sometimes react unusually around pregnant women. My sister's cat wouldn't leave her alone during her 3rd trimester. Security Chief Alvarez expressed his displeasure, frequently glancing at his watch. Officer Morgan, we must process the suspect and resume regular operations at this entrance. This incident is causing considerable disruption, he stated. Deborah nodded in agreement, pausing briefly before closing her notebook. Mrs. Thompson, would you be willing to have the mall's first aid responder assess your vitals prior to your departure? This is simply a precaution. Max is specially trained in medical detection, and his actions indicate he's alerting to something. Emily's husband, Mark Thompson, a tall man in a business suit, has now joined them. Is that truly necessary? We are already running behind schedule for her prenatal appointment this afternoon. It would only take a minute, Deborah urged calmly. Max has a recorded history of identifying medical concerns prior to human recognition. Mark noticed a touch of worry in Deborah's tone. He thought it likely wouldn't be a problem. Emily had experienced more backaches than usual today. The mall's first aid responder, Rodriguez, who previously worked as an EMT, arrived quickly with a medical kit. His brief examination showed no immediate issues. Emily's blood pressure was a little high, but remained within the expected range for pregnancy. Her pulse was steady, and she indicated no unusual symptoms beyond the normal discomfort of the 3rd trimester. Everything appeared normal, Rodriguez concluded, as he packed away his stethoscope. Blood pressure was slightly elevated, but that's typical after standing and giving police statements. I suggest resting before your doctor's appointment this afternoon. Mark assisted Emily to her feet, his arms providing support around her waist. There, you see? Nothing to worry about. Your dog likely just smelled something else. Deborah nodded, although she noticed Max's continued alertness. We appreciate your understanding. Please don't hesitate to seek medical care if you notice any changes before your scheduled appointment. As the Thompsons walked away in the direction of the mall's north parking structure, Max pulled on his lead, emitting another whine that caused Deborah's stomach to clench with concern. Officer Morgan, Alvarez's voice interrupted her thoughts. We need to finish processing our suspect, and honestly, I'll have to create an incident report regarding your K9's conduct. Mall management prioritizes all potential safety concerns, Deborah responded, her frustration hidden by her professional demeanor. Max has not exhibited this behavior previously. He holds certifications in several detection specialties and has a flawless training history. Despite this, his actions caused a disruption and caused alarm for a pregnant woman. This is an issue that cannot be disregarded. Deborah finished the required forms for the shoplifting suspect, coordinating for a patrol unit to convey him to the precinct for booking. During this time, Max appeared remarkably apprehensive, his focus frequently returning to the path the Thompsons had taken, even after they were no longer visible. When they ultimately reached their vehicle, Deborah began to question her partnership. Had she misinterpreted Max's actions? Could there have been a gap in their training that accounted for this awkward situation? The upcoming incident report would necessitate a formal reply and potentially a review of Max's certification, a bureaucratic ordeal that could affect their standing in the K-9 unit. "What were you attempting to communicate to me, boy?" she inquired softly. As they drove away from the mall, Max's eyes remained focused on the structure they were leaving behind. Over the years, she had come to trust his instincts without question. His abilities had located individuals when technology faltered and uncovered evidence that human investigators overlooked. However, today, his conduct had appeared erratic, lacking professionalism, and potentially harmful to their reputation. Despite this, as they drove back to the precinct, Deborah felt a persistent unease that Max had been attempting to convey something significant, something that everyone, including herself, had disregarded prematurely. The autumn rain grew stronger as Deborah guided their vehicle into the precinct's K-9 unit parking area. Her thoughts returned to the initial time she encountered Max 3 years previously at the regional training facility in eastern Washington. She was recuperating from a shoulder injury, which she had gotten during a chase, an event that made her reconsider her career in patrol. The K-9 division appeared to be an ideal change, blending her law enforcement background with her long-held love of working dogs. Max remained calmly still in his kennel, while other dogs barked and jumped energetically as potential handlers passed by. A certain quality in his concentrated, focused gaze had established a connection with her instantly, an intelligence that appeared to examine her as completely as she was assessing him. "He's had 3 handlers already," the kennel master had informed her. "Too intense," they'd said. "Too focused on blood tracking to the exclusion of other training. Great nose, but they couldn't direct it appropriately." She knelt before his kennel, and Max approached the gate with dignified curiosity, unlike the frenetic energy of the other candidates. "He's not washing out," she said with certainty. "He's just waiting for someone who understands him." Their first 6 months together had been challenging. Max's extraordinary olfactory abilities sometimes overwhelmed his other training objectives. Although many police dogs receive training to identify various odors, such as narcotics or explosives, Max exhibited an exceptional and almost uncanny ability to detect blood. He was able to identify incredibly small traces that occasionally bypassed crime scene technicians, precisely locating their position with a disturbing accuracy. This remarkable talent significantly impacted their collaboration during a standard missing persons case their first year together. A 6-year-old boy had disappeared during a family hiking trip in the Cascade foothills. Standard search patterns had yielded nothing, and after 36 hours, hope was fading. Deborah had given Max one of the boy's t-shirts, expecting him to track the general scent trail. Instead, Max had detected microscopic blood traces from a small scrape the child had sustained before going missing. The blood was so minimal the parents hadn't even realized their son was injured. Following this nearly invisible trail, Max guided rescuers to an abandoned mining shaft, the location where the boy had fallen and become trapped. Medical personnel subsequently confirmed that without Max's exceptional detection abilities, they would not have found the child in time. Their most significant case occurred during the Highway 18 bridge collapse. Amid the chaos of broken concrete and twisted rebar, Max systematically located survivors by detecting blood through layers of debris. A notable example occurred when he firmly advocated for a specific area of collapsed roadway, even though thermal imaging revealed no heat signatures. Rescue personnel subsequently located a young woman experiencing hypothermia. Her core temperature was so low that sensors failed to register it. However, Max identified microscopic blood originating from her internal injuries, perceiving it through 20 feet of concrete. Following the incident, researchers from Pacific Northwest University's medical detection program contacted the department regarding a study of Max's abilities. Subsequent, controlled tests validated what Deborah already knew. Max could detect blood at concentrations as low as a few parts per billion, and even more remarkably, he could differentiate between various types of bleeding, appearing to prioritize based on the severity or source of the blood. Dr. Eleanor Patel, the program's lead researcher, had been especially intrigued by Max's seeming ability to detect internal bleeding that presented with no external signs. "He's not simply smelling the blood," she explained to Deborah during one testing session. "He's detecting these specific biomarkers released when certain tissues are damaged. It's as if he possesses a portable medical laboratory in his nose." This training was integrated into their standard certification process, with Max's capabilities detailed in peer-reviewed research articles and specialized law enforcement journals. His detection skills had identified gunshot victims concealed within buildings, determined internal injuries in car accident victims who presented without visible trauma, and even alerted to a brain aneurysm in a colleague during a routine training exercise. Despite this, those remarkable talents had been disregarded by all, even herself, when Max had concentrated on Emily Thompson. Now, sitting in the parking lot, rain beating on the roof of their car, Deborah resolved to act. Max had never been mistaken when expressing that degree of concern, not once in 3 years. She retrieved her phone and searched for Emily Thompson, Seattle. A social media profile surfaced instantly. The woman from the mall, whose profile picture showed her smiling next to her husband, appeared pregnant to a lesser extent in the image. Her listed previous employment was Thompson and Associates Legal Services. Deborah paused for only a moment before entering the address into her GPS. Max had relied on her judgment repeatedly throughout their partnership. It might be the right time to reciprocate that trust fully, even if it carried the risk of an official warning. The Bellevue Heights apartments presented a sharp difference from the nearby area, a contemporary high-rise with expansive windows reflecting the overcast sky. Deborah had changed into regular clothing, keeping her badge safely tucked in her jacket pocket. Max was in the passenger seat, his work vest off, but his specialized training collar still fastened. "This is likely nothing," Deborah said to him as they waited parked near the building entrance. "Should I be incorrect, this unsanctioned follow-up investigation could jeopardize both our professional lives." Max's unwavering look suggested unwavering confidence, his posture rigid with the same readiness he exhibited at the mall. When Emily Thompson's blue SUV entered the building's underground parking area, his response was instant, a quiet signal and movement forward that Deborah had come to recognize as unwavering belief. "All right, colleague," she said, starting her engine, "but we will proceed cautiously." The building's concierge halted them at the lobby entrance, observing Max with professional concern. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but pets aren't allowed in the common areas without prior arrangement." Deborah presented her badge, maintaining a conversational tone rather than an authoritative one. "I'm Officer Morgan, Seattle PD. I'm following up on an incident report involving one of your residents, Emily Thompson. It will only take a few minutes." The concierge paused, then placed a brief call that seemed to resolve any issues. 18th floor, apartment 1802. "I will inform Mr. Thompson that you are coming up." The elevator journey provided Deborah time to reevaluate her decision once more. She possessed no legitimate reason for her presence here, nor a case number to justify the follow-up. Should the Thompsons lodge a complaint about harassment, she would lack departmental protection. Despite Max's persistent focus, that characteristic intensity which had previously saved lives, it reinforced her determination. Mark Thompson opened the door, having removed his earlier business attire and opting for more relaxed clothing. His face shifted from polite curiosity to recognition and then to exhaustion. "Officer Morgan, is there an issue with Emily's statement?" "No, there wasn't," Deborah confirmed. "I wanted to discuss what happened this morning in person. My canine partner exhibited atypical behavior, and in my experience, that necessitates a reevaluation." She indicated Max, who stood attentively nearby. "I assure you he is entirely safe and remarkably well-trained." Mark's stance remained cautious, but he moved to allow passage. "Emily is currently at rest. She has reported increased discomfort this afternoon, but the physician states that is expected at 30 weeks. The apartment was spacious and tastefully furnished, featuring floor-to-ceiling windows that provided a panoramic view of Lake Washington. Emily reclined on a sectional sofa, appearing more fatigued than she had earlier that morning. A throw blanket covered her legs, even though the apartment was warm. "Officer Morgan," Emily's surprise was clear as she attempted to sit up straighter. She asked, "Is something wrong with my witness statement?" Max's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. His body tightened, his nose working quickly as he focused intently on Emily, mirroring the focus he's displayed at the mall, but now with heightened urgency. "I apologize for this unusual visit," Deborah began, keeping a firm grip on Max's lead. "But I wanted to check on you." Max is specially trained in medical detection, and his behavior this morning indicated he detected something concerning. Emily's hand moved protectively over her abdomen. The mall first aid person reported everything was fine. Deborah conceded that it was likely. However, Max had a proven ability to identify medical concerns prior to the onset of typical signs. He had been involved in medical research projects at Pacific Northwest University, consistently demonstrating a flawless record of detection accuracy. Mark approached his wife, his posture revealing a cautious disbelief. "You're implying your dog possesses knowledge regarding my wife's health that her obstetrician lacks?" Deborah selected her subsequent phrasing with deliberation. "Max possesses specialized training in blood detection, enabling him to identify internal bleeding prior to the emergence of external symptoms. He has located disaster victims beneath rubble by detecting microscopic blood traces through 20 feet of concrete." Emily shifted uncomfortably on the sofa, wincing slightly. "I've just been having some back pain and pressure," she said. "The doctor said it's normal, especially since I've been on my feet more than usual today." Max abruptly accelerated with such resolve that Deborah had to steady herself. Rather than barking, he whimpered anxiously, employing the sound he reserved for search and rescue missions when he'd found a seriously hurt individual. "When is your doctor's appointment?" Deborah inquired, her worry increasing as she noticed Emily's paleness and the slight tremor in her hands. "Not until 4, Mark replied, glancing at his watch. "About an hour from now." Deborah made a decision that could end her career if she was wrong. "Mr. Thompson, I strongly recommend you take your wife to the hospital now. Not in an hour. Right now." The assessment was based on your dog's behavior. Mark's incredulity was unmistakable. "That seems..." Mark started, but was interrupted. "It hurts," Emily said. Her voice had changed, fear edging into her tone, as she pressed both hands against her abdomen. "It's getting worse, not better, and I feel dizzy when I stand up." Deborah quietly stated that those could be symptoms of placental abruption, referencing her emergency response training and the potential for internal bleeding that conventional examinations might miss in early stages. Emily's face grew even paler. "My sister experienced that with her second baby. The doctor had mentioned that I have some risk factors." Mark's skepticism vanished immediately, seeing the fear in his wife's voice. "I'll get the car," he said. Deborah countered, "I think we should call an ambulance," already reaching for her phone. If Max's observations are accurate, each minute is crucial. While she contacted 911, requesting urgent medical assistance for a potential obstetric emergency, Deborah observed Max continuing his intense monitoring of Emily. The expression in his amber eyes was familiar to her, drawn from their most vital search missions, the unwavering conviction that had guided rescuers to survivors whom others considered lost. The sound of the approaching ambulance broke through the usual sounds of the affluent neighborhood. Mark knelt beside Emily, his previous doubts gone, replaced by clear worry as he held her hand. Her condition worsened quickly in the 12 minutes since Deborah had made the call, her skin now damp, her breathing faint. "The ambulance is nearly here," Deborah told them, having ensured the paramedics could reach the apartment. Max stayed exactly where he was next to her, his vigilance unchanged, but his actions were now restrained and professional. The paramedics arrived with skill deficiency, 2 experienced emergency responders who didn't pause for greetings as they started their evaluation. They functioned with the coordinated accuracy developed over years of collaboration, one starting intravenous access while the other observed vital signs and asked pointed questions regarding the pregnancy. At 30 weeks pregnant, Emily reported increased pain and pressure today, along with dizziness when standing, as the lead paramedic worked. "Any vaginal bleeding?" he asked. "No," Emily answered, her voice weak. "Just the pain and feeling faint. It's been getting worse all day." Deborah approached. "My canine partner, Max, is specifically trained in blood detection. His behavior suggests possible internal bleeding, potentially a placental abruption. The paramedic glanced at Max, then back to Deborah, recognition dawning. Were Morgan and Max involved in the bridge collapse? The team responsible for locating the hypothermic victim? Yes, Deborah verified, feeling a wave of relief knowing she wouldn't have to explain the atypical medical warning. The paramedic acknowledged, immediately modifying his plan. Possible concealed abruption? Let's proceed now. Establish a wide-open fore and prepare for obstetrical trauma at Harbor Medical. To Mark, he added, we're transporting your wife to Harbor instead of Seattle General. This facility boasts the region's leading high-risk obstetrics team. Emily was moved to the stretcher with careful urgency. Her condition was deteriorating as her body attempted to counteract the blood loss, a detail only Max was able to discern. The paramedics permitted Mark to accompany them in the ambulance. Before the doors closed, the lead paramedic addressed Deborah. Are you coming? If your K-9 detected anything our equipment isn't showing, the doctors will want to know precisely how he alerted. Deborah acknowledged, trailing behind in her car with Max secured in his compartment. The ambulance navigated the traffic at a measured pace, its lights and sirens clearing a path through the crowded roadways as it proceeded to the waterfront hospital complex. During the journey, Deborah's police radio transmitted an urgent notification from the ambulance. Patient becoming unresponsive, BP declining, potential obstetric hemorrhage underway, estimated time of arrival at Harbor Medical, for minutes. Deborah gripped the steering wheel, keeping pace with the ambulance. Max, unable to decipher the radio communication, noticed the shift in her stance and whimpered gently from his space. Good boy, she said. You were right. You knew when nobody else did. Harbor Medical's emergency entrance was already ready upon their arrival. A trauma team stood by, prepared with equipment for both Emily and the baby. Deborah observed the transfer of Emily from the ambulance, the medical personnel moving with the focused urgency characteristic of serious incidents. A tall woman in surgical scrubs approached as Emily was wheeled into the hospital, questioning the paramedics before addressing Deborah. I'm Dr. Keisha Williams, obstetrical trauma, she stated. They tell me your K-9 detected this before conventional symptoms appeared? Deborah confirmed. Yes, Max is specialized in blood detection. He exhibited significant concern regarding Mrs. Thompson around 9:30 a.m. this morning, followed by heightened alarm when we examined her at her apartment around 2:45 p.m. Dr. Williams appeared contemplative, not dismissive. The first ultrasound does not reveal a clear placental abruption, but her declining blood pressure and other symptoms indicate a possible internal hemorrhage. Could your dog's behavior assist us in pinpointing the source of the bleeding? Deborah confirmed his capability, expressing surprise but appreciating the doctor's candor. He is trained to identify the most potent origin of the smell. The doctor then decided to bring him in, stating, we are preparing for emergency surgery, but if your dog can provide us with any further details regarding the site of the bleeding, it could save valuable time. Deborah guided Max through the emergency department, disregarding the surprised glances from his staff as they entered the trauma bay, where Emily was now encircled by medical equipment. The monitoring devices indicated her heart rate was elevated, and her blood pressure was dangerously low, even with fluids being administered through 2 IVs. Emily, we're going to perform an emergency cesarean, Dr. Williams was explaining. The baby is showing signs of distress, and your condition is deteriorating. Rapid action was essential. Max proceeded with impeccable control as Deborah positioned him nearer the bed. His nose systematically scanned across Emily's body before he settled quickly, placing his paw deliberately and steadily on the upper right quadrant of her abdomen, a trained signal indicating the most concentrated source of the scent he was following. Upper right quadrant, Dr. Williams observed. Possible right-sided placental abruption with retroplacental bleeding. Let's move her 2 or 3 now, prepare for a possible DIC protocol, and have the neonatal team on standby for premature delivery. As they wheeled Emily toward the operating room, she reached out weakly toward Deborah and Max. Thank you, she whispered. Mark stood still for a moment as his wife was rushed away, medical terminology passing around him too quickly to understand. Then he turned to Deborah, his face pale. The doctor stated, if we had waited until our scheduled appointment, it would have been He was unable to complete the sentence. Your wife is in good hands, Deborah reassured him, despite the seriousness of the situation being clear in the controlled disarray surrounding them. Harbor Medical possesses an exceptional trauma team. A nurse came forward to direct Mark to the surgical waiting area, noting that the procedure would probably take a minimum of 1 hour. He paused briefly to kneel beside Max before going with her. I didn't believe, he stated quietly, his voice heavy with feeling. But you knew. How did you know when no one else could discern it? Deborah wished she could offer a less complicated explanation than the intricate mix of genetics, training, and the unexplainable connection between handler and canine that had previously saved lives. He's special, she replied, and he's never wrong when he alerts like that. The surgical waiting room possessed the characteristic stillness often found in hospitals, a place where time appeared to hang between hope and worry. Mark Thompson walked back and forth across the room, pausing sometimes to look out the rain-streaked windows at the harbor below, then continuing his steady steps. Deborah remained still in the corner, Max settled at her feet, yet watchful, his training enabling him to stay composed within the medical setting despite likely detecting stress from the humans nearby. You don't need to remain, Mark stated abruptly, ending the silence that had lasted almost 30 minutes. You've already exceeded your required responsibilities. Deborah responded, I'd like to observe this conclusion, unless you desire solitude. Mark shook his head, returning to the molded plastic chair beside her. No, you and Max are the reason we're here in time. He paused. They're not just empty words when I say Emily and the baby would. He swallowed hard, unable to complete the thought. The surgical liaison nurse had updated them once, 20 minutes into the procedure, with the measured optimism that medical professionals cultivate. Emily was stable, the surgery progressing, more information would come when available. The carefully neutral phrasing had done little to ease the tension visible on Mark's face. Can I ask, he began after another pause, how did your partner know? The doctors performed tests this morning during her routine checkup and found no cause for concern. Deborah paused, contemplating how to explain something that medical researchers were still investigating. Max's sense of smell is approximately 40 times more powerful than ours, but it's more than just sensitivity. He had received specialized training to detect blood in quantities undetectable by standard testing. Crucially, he could distinguish between normal blood presence and unusual bleeding patterns. However, Mark pointed out there was no visible blood. Even now, the doctor explained, it was a concealed abruption. The blood didn't need to be visible to him. The body releases specific biomarkers when internal bleeding occurs. Tiny alterations in blood chemistry, undetectable through skin, breath, or even clothing, don't escape Max's awareness. Their conversation was paused as the door opened, showing Dr. Williams still wearing surgical scrubs, her expression carefully neutral, yet subtly conveying the relief that accompanied good news. Mr. Thompson, she started, sitting in the chair opposite them, your wife is stable now. An emergency cesarean delivery was performed, and we are currently treating the placental abruption that caused significant internal bleeding. And the baby? Mark asked, his voice quiet. Your daughter is in neonatal intensive care. She is premature at 30 weeks, but is breathing independently with supplemental oxygen. Her vital signs are stable, which is notable given the situation. The visible strain lessened from Mark's body, although worry remained on his face. Is it possible for me to see them? Emily is recovering now. She can be seen briefly in approximately 20 minutes. The baby will remain in the NICU, but you may visit her as well once Emily is settled. Dr. Williams then focused on Deborah and Max. Officer Morgan, I wish to thank you and your partner for your actions. The surgical team verified a concealed placental abruption precisely where your dog indicated. How critical was it? Deborah inquired softly. The doctor's formal composure eased a bit. Throughout my 15 years practicing obstetrical medicine, I have seldom observed a concealed abruption advance to such a degree without noticeable external signs. Had Mrs. Thompson arrived at her scheduled appointment, both she and the baby would likely have been in critical condition, potentially past the point where we could have provided effective intervention. Mark covered his face with his hands, the full weight of how near they had come to a tragic outcome finally registering with him. Dr. Williams added, It's quite notable that your dog identified this issue at the mall earlier today, prior to Mrs. Thompson showing any noticeable signs. The pathology report indicates the abruption was in its initial stages then. There was microscopic bleeding that wouldn't have been picked up by standard screening methods. This aligns with his training, as Deborah clarified. Max located faint traces of blood, several hours old and too minimal for crime scene technicians to identify without specialized chemical analysis. Fortunately, his abilities helped save 2 lives today. Dr. Williams observed, consulting her pager. The obstetrics department would be keen to learn more about the canine program. They are continuously searching for improved techniques for early detection of pregnancy complications. After the doctor departed, Mark remained silent for several minutes, processing everything. Finally, he turned to Deborah. I dismissed him completely this morning. I thought it was just an untrained animal making a scene, he said. Most people would have reacted the same way, Deborah assured him. That's why I came to your apartment, despite having no official reason to follow up. I've learned to trust Max's alerts, even when they seem improbable. How did this happen without anyone noticing? Mark asked. The inquiry seemed aimed more at himself than at Deborah. Emily had a checkup just last week. All results were normal. Dr. Williams noted it was concealed. The bleeding was situated behind the placenta, not externally. Such instances are notably dangerous as they frequently lack symptoms until they reach a critical state. The liaison nurse reappeared, letting them know Emily had been moved to recovery and Mark could visit briefly. He stood up, then paused. Would you and Max join as well? For just a moment, I believe Emily would like to express her gratitude to both of you. The recovery room was softly lit and peaceful, except for the consistent beeping of the medical devices. Emily was positioned a little upright, her skin still fair, but without the bluish tinge of severe blood loss. Her eyes lit up upon seeing Mark, and then grew wide with surprise as Deborah and Max entered behind him. You remained, she said faintly, reaching out her hand. Thank you doesn't seem sufficient. Deborah moved closer to the bed, Max keeping his heels firmly planted. I'm just glad we followed up, she said. How are you feeling? Emily responded with a faint smile, like I've been hit by a truck. She added, but they say both I and Charlotte are going to be okay. Charlotte? Deborah inquired. Mark confirmed. Charlotte Morgan Thompson. We just decided on the middle name. It seemed appropriate to name her partly after the officer who saved her life, he said, his voice catching slightly. Deborah experienced a sudden emotion that constricted her throat. That's quite an honor, but Max deserves the recognition. He was the one who recognized something was amiss. Emily's eyes moved towards the Belgian Malinois, who was sitting attentively by Deborah. The doctor explained the situation, stating that Deborah had a concealed placental abruption that wouldn't have presented symptoms until it was too late. Your dog detected it hours before any medical equipment could have. Deborah explained that his nose can detect blood in concentrations as low as a few parts per billion. The research team at Pacific Northwest University continues to try and understand exactly how he distinguishes between normal blood presence and abnormal bleeding patterns. Well, whatever he sensed, Emily said, he knew before anyone else that something was seriously wrong. The doctor said, by the time we reached my scheduled appointment, she trailed off, her hand tightening around Mark's. Focusing on the encouraging aspects, the nurse interjected gently. Your daughter is progressing remarkably well, considering she was born at 30 weeks. You will be able to visit her in the NICU after you have had a little more rest. As preparations were made for Emily to get the rest she needed, Max did something unexpected. He moved a little closer, his nose softly touching Emily's hand where it lay on the blanket. The brief touch ended as he resumed his place next to Deborah, yet it brought tears to Emily's eyes. It's almost as if he knows, she murmured. Deborah affirmed with a nod, her own throat constricted with feeling. I believe he does. The neonatal intensive care unit functioned according to a unique cadence, separate from the regulated disorder of the emergency department below. Quiet tones and delicate actions fostered an environment of meticulous accuracy. While medical staff cared for the unit's small patients, 3 days elapsed since the emergency surgery. Deborah stood outside the glass-walled room, watching as Emily sat beside the incubator holding her daughter. Charlotte Morgan Thompson, born 8 weeks premature and weighing just over 3 pounds, had surpassed initial medical expectations. Despite needing continued oxygen and feeding support, she demonstrated significant strength, a quality neonatal specialist linked to the swift action that had avoided extended oxygen deficiency. "She has your fighting spirit," Deborah overheard Mark say to his wife as the sliding door opened to allow another visitor. Dr. Williams came forward, holding a clipboard, her usual professional appearance relaxed by a sincere smile as she addressed the new parents. Deborah had initially intended to leave, feeling she shouldn't interrupt their private medical conversation. However, before she could depart, Mark noticed her through the window and gestured for her to join them, showing that her presence was appreciated. "Officer Morgan," Dr. Williams acknowledged as Deborah entered. "I was just reviewing Charlotte's progress with the Thompsons. She's exceeding our expectations for a 30-week delivery following placental abruption." Emily looked up from the incubator, her smile showing exhaustion. The transfusions and emergency surgery had taken their toll, but the medical team had assured her that with time, she would recover completely. "We were just discussing arranging for Max to meet her formally once she regains some strength. The NICU supervisor has approved this as an exception." "He would appreciate that," Deborah responded, feeling moved by the action. "He is currently situated in the K-9 unit vehicle. Department guidelines prohibit him from entering medical facilities without explicit permission." Dr. Williams recorded a note on her clipboard. "I have issued that authorization, effective immediately. I have discussed with the hospital administrator the possibility of creating a pilot program involving your K-9 unit for high-risk obstetric screenings. Your partner's capabilities could potentially transform how we identify early pregnancy complications." This idea wasn't completely surprising. Max's exceptional detection skills have previously drawn attention from the medical field, but using them in obstetrics presents a promising new area of exploration. Deborah considered the research potential involving other pregnant women, focusing on complications that could be identified before they escalated into life-threatening emergencies. She volunteered to discuss the idea with her superiors, noting that the department already had established protocols for specialized deployments in medical settings. Mark stood beside his wife, his hand gently resting on the incubator holding their daughter. "I found it difficult to accept Dr. Williams' explanation of Emily's condition. The placenta had started to detach from the uterine wall that morning, coinciding with the moment your dog first alerted at the mall. The doctor detailed that the bleeding was entirely internal, adopting a clinical and precise tone. She clarified that standard screening methods would not have identified the issue at that stage. When Emily arrived at the hospital, approximately 20% of her blood volume had been lost into the concealed space behind the placenta. If the condition had advanced another 2 to 3 hours, the potential consequences would likely have been severe. Emily reached through the incubator's access port to gently touch her daughter's tiny hand. The NICU doctor explained that babies born following placental abruption frequently experience complications related to oxygen deprivation. However, Charlotte's test results are all normal. Dr. Williams clarified that we were able to deliver her because the placental separation hadn't advanced to the point where it would have jeopardized her oxygen supply. Typically, in situations like this, patients don't receive medical attention until they display significant symptoms, and the fetus has frequently been in distress for hours. A sense of the potential severity of the situation lingered briefly before Mark spoke. Hospital leadership inquired about our willingness to contribute to a case study for their medical journal. The focus would be on documenting an instance where a police canine identified a critical medical condition prior to the detection by conventional medical technology. "I believe this is an excellent proposition," Deborah stated. "Max's abilities warrant greater awareness within the medical field. There could be other potential uses we haven't yet explored." A soft chime from Dr. Williams's pager interrupted the discussion. Having reviewed the message, she stepped away to care for another patient, stating she would return to talk about Charlotte's feeding progress. Once she left, Emily took Deborah's hand. "I can't help but think about how things might have turned out differently," Emily said. "If you hadn't relied on Max to follow up, he's the one who should be recognized," Deborah replied. "I nearly dismissed him myself. Were it not for our shared past, and the numerous occasions his instincts proved accurate even when they appeared unlikely, I might have considered his actions an unusual occurrence. Will you incur any repercussions for observing us without proper authorization? Mark inquired, his voice filled with worry. Deborah replied with a smile. Actually, the opposite is true. After the department became aware of the situation, they've provided complete backing. The possibility of favorable media coverage and the potential for advancements in medical research have transformed what might have been a routine matter into what my sergeant described as a public relations opportunity. Observing through the glass wall of the NICU, she noticed other small infants in their incubators, all supported by the equipment intended to maximize their chances of survival. She wondered how many of their mothers might have gained from earlier identification of complications. What number of future cases might be identified sooner? Ideally, if Max's abilities could be consistently used in medical screening. Would you and Max consider being Charlotte's godparents? Emily asked abruptly, the question surprising Deborah completely. I know it's unusual, but then so is having your life saved by a police dog with a supernatural nose. The unexpected offer moved Deborah profoundly. Throughout her career in law enforcement, she had rescued individuals and impacted numerous cases. Yet this situation felt distinct, more intimate, and deeper in significance. We would be honored, she replied concisely, recognizing that this case had altered not only the Thompsons' lives but also her own understanding of her collaboration with Max. She had always been impressed by his exceptional skills, but now she realized that relying on those abilities could go beyond standard work rules and processes when something truly critical was involved. As she departed the NICU to get Max from the car, Deborah considered the connection that had led her to trust her colleague's judgment, even though every reasonable consideration suggested otherwise. Certain bonds transcended typical understanding, be it between a mother and child, a handler and dog, or the unusual capacity of a dog to perceive what advanced medical equipment missed until the situation was critical. The winter sun stretched shadows across the main entrance of Harbor Medical Center as Deborah led Max through the automatic doors. While they had been visiting weekly throughout Emily's lengthy recovery, today held a significant moment, Charlotte's formal release following 31 days in neonatal intensive care. The Belgian Malinois moved with impeccable discipline despite the excitement visible in his attentive stance. He had adjusted surprisingly well to the hospital setting during their earlier visits, preserving his professional attitude even as staff paused to appreciate him. He chose a specialized therapy dog designation, temporarily granted for this visit, instead of his usual working vest. The Thompson family was located in the NICU family room, where balloons and a small group of medical staff who had cared for Charlotte during her first month were gathered. The premature infant, who had previously appeared impossibly tiny, now weighed nearly 5 pounds. Her improved condition was clear in her more alert gaze and stronger movements. Emily, as mandated by hospital policy for discharge, remained in a wheelchair despite her physical recovery from surgery. A smile spread across her face when she noticed Deborah and Max entering. The guests of honor, she announced, prompting the assembled medical team to turn. Everyone, this is Officer Deborah Morgan and K-9 Officer Max, the team that saved both our lives. Dr. Williams approached. Perfect timing. We were just about to have a small celebration before discharge. Charlotte has surpassed all developmental milestones. Mark came forward, gently holding his daughter. The change in him was striking. He had previously questioned Max's methods, but now he knelt with care to position his daughter at eye level with the Belgian Malinois. Charlotte, he spoke quietly, even though the baby was too young to comprehend, this is Max. He's the reason you and your mom are both here today. Max stayed completely still, his training enabling him to evaluate the little human without any actions that could be perceived as threatening. Following a brief period of careful observation, he performed an action that moved Deborah to tears. He slowly lowered his head in a gesture of remarkable tenderness, his nose delicately sniffing the baby's blanket before he returned to his poised sitting posture. He remembers, Emily said softly. Somehow he understands who she is. A representative from Pacific Northwest University's Medical Detection Program, Dr. Patel, was present for this important event. For the past month, she had held several sessions analyzing Max's capabilities, integrating the insights from Charlotte's case into her continuous research. Dr. Patel explained to the assembled medical personnel that the truly notable aspect wasn't solely his ability to identify the abruption prior to the onset of typical symptoms, but also his ability to distinguish it from standard pregnancy blood markers. His nose detected the precise biomarkers indicative of placental separation, a capability beyond the scope of our present screening procedures. A NICU nurse who had been involved in Charlotte's care from her initial arrival expressed astonishment. In 23 years of neonatal nursing, I have encountered numerous placental abruption cases. The results are seldom this favorable, particularly with concealed abruptions, where diagnosis usually occurs only after pronounced symptoms manifest. That's why we are implementing the pilot program next month, Dr. Williams added. Officer Morgan and Max will visit our high-risk pregnancy clinic twice weekly to screen patients. We are developing a research protocol to document and analyze his alerts. Emily reached out to stroke Max's head, a gesture the disciplined canine accepted with dignified patience. We've been told that many women with my condition don't reach the hospital in time, she said quietly. Without immediate intervention, both mother and baby often, she didn't need to complete the thought. Everyone in the room understood the seriousness of what had nearly happened and what Max's extraordinary abilities had prevented. Mark carefully returned Charlotte to Emily's arms, the baby now sleeping peacefully, unaware of her medical journey or the significance of this day. We wanted to give you something, he said to Deborah, retrieving a small package from beside the wheelchair. While it may seem modest in comparison to your previous generosity, we wished for you to receive this. Within the securely packaged box was a framed photograph depicting Charlotte and her incubator, showcasing her small hand clasped around Emily's finger. Accompanying it, a silver, badge-shaped medallion bore the inscription Canine Hero, Max, along with Charlotte's birth date. The department already presented us with formal recognition last week, Deborah remarked, moved by this thoughtful personal touch. Emily clarified that this wasn't about formal acknowledgement. It was a gift from our family to yours, as you and Max have become to us. While they made arrangements to depart the hospital, Charlotte was safely secured in her car seat. With medical staff providing concluding directions, Deborah considered the remarkable sequence of occurrences that led them to this point. What started as a standard shoplifting call had fundamentally altered not only the Thompsons' lives, but potentially the future of maternal-fetal medicine. The hospital administrator had spoken with her earlier that week regarding the possibility of expanding the pilot program into a lasting screening initiative, one that could eventually be mirrored in hospitals nationwide. Max's capabilities, previously viewed as exceptional even within the specialized field of canine units, could potentially lead to a completely novel method for the early detection of pregnancy complications. As they accompanied the family to their vehicle, Deborah noted Max's persistent attentiveness, not the frantic vigilance of that initial meeting, but the content focus of a protector whose responsibility was now secure. Certain bonds defied easy understanding, whether built over years of collaboration or forged in a sudden crisis when intuition trumped formal instruction. As they arrived at the parking area, Emily spoke to Deborah for a final moment. The doctor informed me yesterday that if we had delayed even 2 more hours, neither Charlotte nor I would have made it. I can never adequately express my gratitude for heeding Max's concerns when everyone else disregarded them. Deborah observed Mark fastening the car seat, Charlotte sleeping soundly inside. That's what partnership signifies, she stated quietly. Occasionally, one must have faith, despite not completely comprehending. This feeling resonated as much within her connection with Max as it did regarding the remarkable rapport they had cultivated with the Thompson family. A note that frequently, the most meaningful relationships arise from instances where we choose to listen to intuition over reason, believe instead of question, and connect instead of withdraw. Have you ever observed an animal recognizing something before humans were able to perceive it? The remarkable story of Max and Officer Morgan illustrates that our animal companions often sense threats that are unseen by us. Their heightened senses, especially their remarkable ability to detect anomalies, occasionally alert them to medical conditions, natural disasters, or other threats well before we become aware. Throughout history, accounts have arisen of dogs detecting cancer in their owners, sensing oncoming seizures, or even alerting to significant changes in blood sugar levels. Although scientific research continues to examine these extraordinary capabilities, It remains undeniable that animals occasionally detect things that even advanced medical technology misses. Considering the critical emergency experienced by Emily and Charlotte Thompson, should trained police dogs be utilized more frequently in medical environments? Max's remarkable capability to identify a hidden placental abruption hours prior to standard signs emerging indicates possible, yet unrealized, possibilities for canine teams extending past typical law enforcement duties. With medical detection dogs increasingly utilized for conditions like diabetes and epilepsy, possibly law enforcement canines, through specialized training, could fill essential gaps in healthcare screening. What's the most astonishing animal instinct story you've encountered? You may have observed a pet acting unusually before an earthquake, a service dog alerting to an undetected medical emergency, or another striking example of animal perception that went beyond common understanding. We are interested in hearing about your experiences with these exceptional bonds between humans and animals. If Max and Officer Morgan's story resonated with you, please like and leave a comment sharing your thoughts. These incredible canine stories showcase the remarkable bond between handlers and their four-legged partners, connections that sometimes transcend explanation and occasionally save lives when it matters most. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We share new police canine stories regularly, each highlighting the remarkable abilities of these highly trained animals and the officers who work alongside them. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you don't miss a new upload. Watch our previous canine hero stories, which are appearing on your screen now. From drug detection and criminal apprehension to search and rescue operations, these incredible working dogs continue to prove that sometimes the most powerful tools in law enforcement have four paws and an extraordinary nose. We'll see you tomorrow with another brand new video. The service dog remains stationed outside his former handler's room, stubbornly resisting attempts by staff to relocate him. He doesn't even recognize you, one nurse observed. He's too far gone. Despite this, the dog persisted. Then, one morning, he calmly positioned himself before the veteran, and suddenly, deeply buried, traumatic memories resurfaced. What actions did the dog take, and what did the veteran ultimately recall? Please subscribe and leave a comment indicating your location. Let's begin. The VA psychiatric facility's fluorescent lights created stark shadows as Sergeant Thomas Grady gazed blankly out the window. 6 months had elapsed since his transfer from Walter Reed, but time felt insignificant within the mental fog he experienced. The sound of rain on the window reflected the scattered recollections that briefly appeared, then vanished before he could hold onto them. "Good morning, Sergeant Grady," a voice said from the entrance. Dr. Elaine Monroe stood there with his file, her demeanor carefully empathetic. "How are you feeling today?" Thomas didn't respond. "The same as yesterday, Doc." His voice held the strained quality of a man who had recently been giving commands above the sound of weapons fire. The mark along his jawline was just an outward sign of the IED's impact. The real harm was hidden beneath his skull, where memories had been broken like glass. "Your latest scans show continued physical healing," Dr. Monroe began, settling into a chair. "Spare me the medical details," Thomas interrupted. 6 months of tests, and all of you can tell me is that I should remember. But I don't." These sudden shifts from clarity to disorientation had become a defining feature of his condition. He shifted abruptly, first displaying the bearing of a soldier, then becoming agitated, seemingly overtaken by disjointed memories without explanation. "You served as a sergeant in the 5th Special Forces. 3 tours in Afghanistan, injured 6 months ago in Kandahar," she pointed out, reiterating their established routine. "So you keep telling me," Thomas responded, a hint of frustration in his voice. "But it's just words. I don't feel it." The medical personnel approached Thomas with care. 3 orderlies had been injured during his previous episodes. His physical strength had returned more quickly than his mental stability, making him a potential hazard when combat memories elicited reactions without a clear connection. Dr. Monroe had accepted his case after 2 prior psychiatrists requested transfers. While others perceived a liability, she identified a distressed veteran caught between recollections and a loss of awareness. "Today, we are going to attempt a different approach," she stated. Thomas laughed, a sound laced with cynicism. "Another quick fix?" Dr. Monroe responded, "Not at all. An unforeseen package has arrived for you. It seems to be from the past. A disturbance in the East Corridor caused people to notice as a uniformed officer guided a Belgian Malinois through security. The dog's ears stood up suddenly, its eyes fixed on Thomas from 30 yards away. Before the handler could respond, the Malinois pulled forward, drawing the officer a few steps. "Heel," the handler ordered firmly. Something about the command "heel" made Thomas feel a strange tremor, although he couldn't remember why. As staff gathered around the visitors, he withdrew to his room. Shortly after, Dr. Monroe arrived at his door, carrying a file. "Sergeant Grady," she said, "there's someone who might be of interest to you. A military working dog named Valor. These documents indicate he served as your canine partner for 14 months in Afghanistan." Thomas looked without expression. "I have no recollection of a dog." Dr. Monroe acknowledged, "That's understandable considering your current state, but Valor's handler has records confirming he was your assigned partner during your final deployment." "My partner?" Thomas repeated, the words feeling unfamiliar. "That's impossible. I would remember that. Would you?" Dr. Monroe asked softly. "You don't remember your squad mates or commanding officer?" Before Thomas could answer, a disturbance arose in the hallway. The Malinois had broken free and raced to Thomas's door, ears forward, body vibrating with energy. "Get that thing out of here," Thomas shouted, stepping back. Something about the dog's intense focus made him uneasy. The handler appeared shortly after, offering an apology as he reattached the leash. "I'm sorry, sir. He's never acted like this. Valor is typically very well behaved." "I don't know this animal," Thomas retorted, "and I don't want it close." The dog emitted a low whine, a sound unexpectedly unsettling, given its earlier assertive behavior. His gaze remained fixed on Thomas. "This wasn't part of my agreement," Dr. Monroe clarified. "Your previous superior officer arranged this. He thought that seeing Valor could potentially stimulate memory recall." Thomas looked at the dog, experiencing only annoyance. "It isn't working. Please remove him." As the handler began to take Valor away, the dog hesitated, firmly positioning his paws at the doorway. The resistance wasn't hostile, but resolute. "I will permit Valor to stay for a short time," Dr. Monroe stated. "Not in your room, but in the shared spaces." Thomas turned away, showing indifference. "Do as you please. You always do." As they led Valor away, the dog turned, his gaze lingering on Thomas. A soft whine, laced with a palpable sense of recognition and sorrow, escaped his lips. In the days that followed, staff noticed a peculiar pattern in Valor's behavior. The Malinois consistently positioned himself along Thomas's path, seemingly waiting. During physical therapy, Valor would appear in the hallway, pressed against the glass, his eyes fixed on Thomas. While Thomas was eating in the common area, the dog would position himself exactly 12 feet away, near enough to watch, but at a distance that caused Thomas discomfort. "He's acting like he's conducting surveillance," commented Jim, an orderly with a background in the Marines. "That's a tactical placement." On the fourth night, security cameras recorded Valor entering the supply closet where Thomas kept his personal belongings. The dog removed his combat boots and brought them to his door, setting them carefully at the threshold. Thomas found the boots the following morning. Instead of his typical anger regarding unwanted entries, he paused, observing them before storing them in his closet, a change from how he had handled previous items. The subsequent night, Valor brought forward another item, a set of dog tags. These, too, were positioned at Thomas's door with thoughtful placement. During therapy sessions, Valor remained outside Dr. Monroe's office. During challenging periods when Thomas's frustration grew close to violence, the dog would scratch at the door until someone opened it, then position himself between Thomas and the doctor, not aggressively but protectively. "He's not threatening," Dr. Monroe observed. "He's intervening, attempting to calm Thomas." Particularly insightful were unguarded moments. Surveillance footage showed Thomas watching Valor from his window. Personnel observed him possessing the dog tags Valor had provided, a personal link he was unwilling to admit. By the second week, the equilibrium between Thomas's opposition and Valor's continued efforts started to weaken. The critical moment occurred during a group therapy session Thomas had hesitantly participated in. 5 veterans were sharing experiences about their returns from war. When another veteran recounted losing his closest friend, it sparked a sudden, intense flashback in Thomas. "Get down!" Thomas yelled, tackling the Vietnam-era veteran across from him. "Sniper on the ridge! Get down or you're dead!" Chaos erupted as Thomas, lost in a combat scenario, dragged the terrified man toward perceived cover. Staff attempted restraint, but Thomas's combat training made him formidable, even confused. Somehow, Valor pushed his way through 2 doors and rushed into the room. Instead of attacking, he positioned himself between Thomas and the staff. The dog leaned against Thomas's legs, then made a circle around him before settling directly in front of him, its eyes fixed on his face. The impact was instant. Thomas stilled, his anger giving way to bewilderment. Then, a sudden realization as he dropped to his knees. What is going on?" he whispered, looking around as if he were seeing the room for the very first time. The link was short-lived. As personnel attended to his victim, Thomas's confusion shifted to fury. Not directed at the veteran, but at Valor. "What in the world is this, huh?" he shouted, scrambling backward. Was this some kind of trick? Using animals to manipulate him? The incident led to an emergency staff meeting. Thomas had barricaded himself in his room, refusing meals and medication. "This dog is triggering severe reactions," the facility director argued. "We have other patients to consider." After debate, a compromise was reached. Valor would have 48 hours before being returned to the military program. The following morning, Thomas was in the garden, experiencing disjointed memories. He didn't realize Valor was near until the dog positioned itself directly in front of him. "Go away," Thomas snapped. "I asked them to keep you away." Valor remained still, amber eyes focused intently on Thomas's face. Thomas stood up quickly. "I said go back. I don't recognize you." He began to walk away, but lost his balance as another memory surfaced. The village again. This time, a chemical smell was present beneath the dust. The sudden dizziness caused him to drop to one knee. When his sight returned, Valor was still present, resolute. "What do you want?" Thomas asked, his voice trembling. He pushed the dog with both hands. Valor endured the force, remaining unmoved. A quiet whine escaped, not of suffering, but of resolve. "Get away," Thomas yelled, retreating rapidly. "I don't know you. I don't remember you." His back struck the garden wall. Thomas slumped down, drawing his knees to his chest protectively. The weight of his circumstances overwhelmed him. A man without memory, his identity solely defined by the accounts of others. He existed between fleeting recollections and a vacant present. "Just leave me alone," he murmured. The expected respite didn't arrive. Instead, Valor approached with measured composure. The Malinois made a single rotation, then settled with a controlled, ritualistic gesture. He extended himself before Thomas, resting his head directly on the toe of his boot in a defined posture, chin lowered, ears pricked, eyes positioned to meet Thomas's gaze when lifted. Thomas remained perfectly still. The particular angle of Valor's head, the weight on his boot, triggered a surge of recognition. The garden seemed to waver, superimposed with a different image. Dusty terrain, tactical equipment, night vision, and this very same pressure against his boot. "Wait, the stance." Thomas spoke, the words coming naturally. "Hold position." Valor's ears moved forward at the instruction, becoming even more still. Thomas looked at the dog, his heart pounding as pieces began to fit together. I know this. I know you." The orderly radioed softly for Dr. Monroe, understanding something important was occurring. With shaking fingers, Thomas reached out, pausing just above Valor's head. Upon making contact, Valor emitted a sound of such palpable relief, it was almost like a human expression. "We trained together," Thomas stated, and memories began to coalesce for the first time since his injury. "North Carolina, you were just a year old. You failed the standard program because you wouldn't leave my side during separation tests." Each word contributed to a clearer picture. Thomas gently scratched behind Valor's ear, precisely where the dog enjoyed it. A movement his body recalled instinctively. "You slept at the foot of my bunk," Thomas said, his voice softening, radiating certainty and familiarity. Against regulations. Sanders protected us because you consistently reported his concealed whiskey supply. Dr. Monroe observed from the garden entrance, directing staff to maintain a distance. Thomas's fingers located a notch in Valor's left ear, a mended split almost imperceptible beneath the fur. A sniper round came too close in Kunar province. Should have heeded the alert sooner. Valor pressed his head more firmly against Thomas's hand, reinforcing the connection. I used to tell the guys you were smarter than half the lieutenants. Thomas's fingers traced along Valor's neck, finding an old scar beneath the fur. You took shrapnel intended for me outside Kandahar. Dr. Monroe approached cautiously. Thomas, you're remembering. He looked up, his eyes clearer than she had ever seen. Not everything, just him. Valor. The name felt correct now. We worked together. He was my responsibility and I was his. Your commanding officer believed your connection might break through the amnesia, Dr. Monroe explained. Memory is complex. Sometimes emotional connections access pathways logical thinking cannot reach. Thomas nodded, his hand never leaving Valor's fur. The details of the incident, the cause of the injury, and the reason for the separation remain unclear. However, this represents a significant improvement, Thomas stated gently, observing Valor's unwavering gaze. He never forgot, Thomas said softly, meeting Valor's steady gaze. Even when I did. Valor adjusted their posture, rising to sit upright next to Thomas instead of facing him, transitioning from a defensive stance to the collaborative positioning they had consistently used throughout numerous missions. Thomas refined his posture, his hand resting on Valor's back with comfortable familiarity. I need to recall more, he stated, his voice filled with renewed resolve. I must understand what transpired with us. In the days that followed, Thomas and Valor remained constantly together. Each hour yielded fresh recollections, as the dog's presence seemed to release long-blocked memories. We were deployed together 3 times, Thomas recounted to Dr. Monroe during a therapy session. The first deployment was a standard patrol and explosive detection mission. The second time, their duties changed to direct action assignments, a result of their effective teamwork. Village clearance operations were a primary focus. Valor was capable of detecting not only explosives but also concealed individuals and weapon storage areas. He had a distinct method of signaling for various dangers. 1 ear twitch indicated explosives, 2 signaled hidden personnel. He saved our unit on numerous occasions. Dr. Monroe observed that Thomas's speech patterns had changed. He displayed increased confidence, utilizing military terminology precisely, and a soldier's rhythm returning to his voice. Thomas acknowledged. Having him here connects me to who I was. I still have gaps. Significant recollections emerged, prompted by specific cues. The framework provided context. Certain actions by Valor triggered related memories. For example, when the dog pressed his nose against Thomas's knee, Thomas remembered their established communication system. When Valor brought a tennis ball, Thomas recalled playing fetch behind their barracks after missions. Michaels, Thomas stated abruptly during a walk through the facility, Specialist Kevin Michaels, our unit's communication expert. I consistently kept butterscotch candies for Valor, even though I cautioned him against giving my dog sweets. By evening, Thomas began constructing a timeline, recording names and events upon our return. He included Jenkins, Rodriguez, and Patel. Captain Ellis led our unit. Lieutenant Cooper served as our immediate commanding officer. He was a good man, willing to listen when others might have asserted authority. When reflecting on a mission where a team member was lost, Thomas appeared visibly upset. Valor rested his head on Thomas's knee, a gesture that steadied him and kept the memory from escalating into a full-blown flashback. The last mission, Thomas began, his voice low. A mountain village close to the Pakistan border. A high-value target was using it as a waypoint. He struggled to break through the mental wall he's built to protect himself from reliving those events. I recall the approach, the village's layout. The teams splitting up. Valor and I secured the eastern buildings. Valor's ears perked up, his body stiffening as if recalling the same event. There was an ambush, Thomas recounted. It wasn't arbitrary, they were anticipating our arrival. The coordination was exceptional. Someone had compromised our operation. His breathing accelerated. Gunfire erupted from numerous locations. Radio communications were disrupted. Men were injured. We were trapped in a courtyard enclosed by buildings. Thomas's hand gripped Valor's fur.
Valor signal.
Not concerning enemy fire, we knew their locations. Something different. He continued attempting to obstruct my way, issuing the explosive signal, but he denied it with a headshake. That's where the memory breaks apart once more. I recall his warning. Then, only noise, pressure, and darkness. That's sufficient for today, Dr. Monroe stated kindly. You've achieved significant advancement. The key moment occurred when a delivery truck backfired in the parking lot. The sound reverberated through the recreation room where Thomas was playing chess. He crouched, pulling the other veteran down, scanning for threats. "AD!" he shouted, completely consumed by memory. This time, the memory played out with perfect clarity. We had cleared 2 buildings, Thomas explained later. Valor pressed against his side. Michaels and Cooper were pinned down. Ellis was coordinating extraction. Valor and I were moving to provide support when heavy fire erupted. His hand instinctively went to a scar on his arm. We reached the stone wall, and that's when the situation changed. Thomas explained that Valor's behavior altered, moving from measured alerts to frantic efforts to prevent our progress. He repeatedly issued the explosive warning, but I wasn't detecting the expected triggers. There was no disturbed earth, no visible wires. His voice tightened. I initially believed he was disoriented by the gunfire. I instructed him to advance twice, and twice he declined, a behavior he had never exhibited before. Valor emitted a soft whine, seemingly recalling the event. Rodriguez was in distress, requesting assistance. I issued the instruction, authorizing movement, disregarding Valor's caution. Thomas momentarily closed his eyes. I directed him to provide healing, employing the command that bypasses his safety protocols. During the process, Valor violated procedure entirely. He attacked me, clamping onto my tactical vest, attempting to pull me back. I felt a surge of anger, believing his training had failed. I instructed him to release his grip and resume his task. Thomas's voice lowered. He complied with that final instruction. However, his posture indicated a problem. His ears were flattened, his tail tucked, and he moved as if he were being forced toward execution. 10 meters from Rodriguez, Valor abruptly surged forward, emitting his most urgent bark. That's when I noticed it. Almost invisible wires connected to a pressure plate located beneath Rodriguez. The IED wasn't intended for a single soldier, but for any responding team. Rodriguez had activated the initial sensor, but his weight was insufficient. Any additional weight would trigger the explosion. Valor had known all along. He moved forward, attempting to disarm the trigger, because I wasn't paying attention. I finally grasped the situation and began calling for assistance. I had just activated my radio when the explosion resulted in Rodriguez's immediate death, critically wounded Thomas, and physically distanced him from Valor. My final recollection prior to Walter Reed was Valor standing watch over me, suffering from shrapnel wounds, securing the area while I was unable to move. Thomas looked at the dog, his expression filled with years of emotion. I failed him. He provided every warning, and I disregarded them. You didn't fail him, Dr. Monroe said gently. You made a judgment call that they're trying to save your teammate, and Valor never gave up on you. That's why I couldn't remember, Thomas realized. My last thought was that I'd killed Rodriguez and endangered everyone by ignoring Valor. The mind protects us from what we can't process, Dr. Monroe explained. Thomas nodded, hand resting on Valor's back. I'm ready now. The following weeks brought a remarkable transformation. Thomas's memories resurfaced in a controlled manner as a significant obstacle dissolved. While Thomas regained his strength, Valor started briefly engaging with other struggling veterans, placing himself close to them before returning to Thomas. He has always possessed the ability to perceive when someone is in distress, Thomas noted. This quality distinguished him, allowing him to understand people better than they understood themselves. The morning of Thomas's discharge dawned with autumn sunlight streaming through golden leaves. His belongings were carefully packed: clothes, medications, a journal, and letters from former unit members. Valor observed the packing, remaining alert but composed. His military vest had been returned, accompanied by retirement documents should Thomas choose that option. Dr. Monroe knocked on the door, asking, "Everything ready?" Thomas nodded, securing his duffel bag. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Your sister has confirmed she will meet you?" "Yes, it still feels strange. Reconnecting with family I barely knew months ago." "Have you decided about Valor?" Thomas's expression became thoughtful. "I'd like to discuss this one last time," he said. They walked to the garden, the site of their breakthrough, with Valor accompanying them. "I've observed how Valor interacts with other veterans," Thomas began. "It's not solely with me that he finds connection. It's with anyone experiencing the darkness I once knew," Dr. Monroe affirmed. "His support for patients in crisis has been extraordinary." "That's what distinguished him in combat," Thomas clarified. "Typically, military dogs are trained to identify particular dangers. Valor consistently recognized when something was amiss even before we possessed confirming data. He perceived changes in human actions that even seasoned soldiers failed to notice." Thomas stroked Valor's back. "I always believed our bond distinguished him," he said. "Now I realize it's inherent to him, this capacity to perceive distress." Dr. Monroe observed, "You're contemplating leaving him here?" Thomas affirmed, "A part of me wants to bring him back with me. He's more than just a dog. He was the one who found me when I was lost." Valor leaned against Thomas's leg, seemingly to show understanding. "However, I often think about others, still trapped where I once was. Veterans with no means of return." Thomas's voice grew strained. "Valor discovered a route when others could not. How many others might he be able to assist?" "We've considered developing a therapy program based on your experience," Dr. Monroe stated. "He won't simply be involved in it," Thomas emphasized. "He would be central to it, a guide for healing through bonds we don't completely understand." Ultimately, Thomas knelt before Valor, looking him directly in the face. "You have consistently understood your purpose better than anyone," he said gently, holding the dog's face with his hands. "In Afghanistan, in this place, you have never forgotten what is important." Valor's focus was complete, his attention unwavering. "My time of service is over," Thomas continued steadily. "But yours is just beginning. Others need you now as I needed you. Those who are lost and uncertain of their return." Thomas touched his forehead to Valor's. "You will guide them as you guided me. And once that task is done, I will be waiting." Thomas rose, regaining composure with military precision. "Dr. Monroe will care for you. I will visit. This isn't farewell. The simply new assignments." He squared his shoulders. "Valor, remain," he requested softly. A flicker of conflict briefly appeared in the dog's posture, a clash between instinct and years of training related to warring. Then Valor composed himself into a flawless sit, holding steady eye contact. Thomas acknowledged him with a single nod, a gesture of respect between peers, not master and dog. He then turned and departed, each stride demanding significant control. He made no backward glances. "I'm out." Valor remained in a seated, attentive position, observing his partner's departure. Only after Thomas disappeared did the dog turn to Dr. Monroe, a silent understanding passing between them. While one mission had ended, another was beginning. Have you ever witnessed the extraordinary bond between a service animal and their human partner? The way they seem to communicate without words, understanding needs that go beyond basic commands. Valor and Thomas's story serves as a reminder that healing can originate from unforeseen places, and that profound bonds can endure even amidst memory loss. Considering Thomas's circumstances, one must wonder, would you possess the fortitude to part with a devoted companion, understanding their potential to guide others out of hardship, mirroring the support they offered you? If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more extraordinary tales of service dogs and the lives they transform. Click the notification bell so you never miss our new uploads. Share this video with friends and family who appreciate the remarkable bond between humans and their canine companions. Be sure to check out our other canine hero stories now on screen, including the incredible story of a search and rescue dog who found a lost child during the worst blizzard in decades. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, with another brand new video.